Irreverent, entertaining, cool. You're listening to LA Talk Radio.
You're listening to Female Filmmakers Fuse with Alexa Polar, only on LA Talk Radio.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Today, I have, again, my co-host, Robin Pabello here.
Happy Sunday.
And our very special guest today, Cali Gilbert.
Hey, hey.
You know, she's a bestseller, author. That's amazing. We'll get to that. Let me just put it out there now. Phone number here, if you have any questions for Cali, it's 818-602-4929. Again, that's 818-602-4929. Now, Cali, you're a writer. This is your 9th book. And the book I'm referring to is It's Simply Filmmaking. And it's a collection that you've interviewed a handful of female filmmakers. So it's all female filmmakers in this book.
Yes, it is.
Okay, and this is your 9th book.
Yes.
And it has to be said, it recently made the bestsellers list, number 3, correct?
Correct.
In Australia.
Yes.
So Australia, what's up? Thank you so much. That's amazing.
Exactly.
They have much love for you. So let's get into this 9th book. Okay, how you're a writer, and now you're a writer director as well.
Yes.
And a photographer as well, correct?
Yes.
So multi-talented, many hats, very busy woman. How do you do it? Please, tell us a little bit about yourself. How did this start?
Yeah, it's so funny. It was actually started back in 2011. I have always been a writer and a photographer. They have been my passions, but it was never something that I saw as a career. It was always just a hobby. And I was never really encouraged either to pursue those. So I went to school. I got an MBA with a sport focus. I'm a former athlete. I graduated from the University of San Francisco at the end of 2010. And I actually started my own event management consulting firm halfway through grad school, thinking that was the direction that I was going to go. And unfortunately, it was the heart of the recession. And I couldn't find work with nonprofits. Dollars were being cut, and it just wasn't happening. And so I actually ended up losing everything in 2011, including my home, and thought, okay, now what? And I had sent out so many resumes, and nothing was happening. And literally one day, I just went out and lifted my hands to the sky and said, okay, obviously this is not working. Show me what to do. And the answer I got was, do what you love. And I knew that was the writing and the photography. And so decided to just focus on that. And it was amazing when I made that shift. It was like every door began to open and everything shifted in my life.
That's great. And it's interesting, we were speaking beforehand, how this all works as a creative being. You have a calling, if you will.
Exactly.
And not a lot of people understand that, but I get it too. There's moments where this idea pops in my head and I have Robin look at me like I'm crazy, and then she'll do it, just write. And she tells me write every day. And sometimes it's not easy for me to write every day because there's nothing coming out, and it's not writer's block per se, but that's the easiest way to explain it. But it's just one of those things where if there's something that seems greater than you come to your mind and say, just do it, you have no other choice but to do it. And I'm referring to something in the positive text when I say this. So please share with us about that, how you get these callings.
Absolutely. So I call it the connection with the muse. And when I refer to the muse, I refer to our intuitive higher self. I think a lot of people think that the muse has to be something outside of ourselves, another person or some type of belief. And it's us, And I also think that, we tend to forget how creatively powerful we are and what we have internally that can be shared with the world. And about 4 years ago, I attended a writer's workshop here in LA with one of my mentors. And it was all about teaching us how to connect with the muse, with our intuition and with that guidance. And it changed my life. It took my writing to an entirely new level. And now when I write, I don't get writer's block because there is that connection, and it's so strong that the words literally flow, and it's an amazing gift. And my muse likes to come now and visit me at usually about 3:30 in the morning. Is her favorite time, and with just these golden nuggets of information. And I wake up and I'm sitting there going, this is pure genius. I have no idea how it's going to happen, but this is genius. And it's amazing because she's never wrong. And this book, the filmmaking book, actually came to me in mid-February. And she's like, she goes, when you started out with the publishing, you kind of learned from those who were successful. And, here and now you're a filmmaker. And the best way to learn is to, seek out, guidance from other filmmakers. And here's your opportunity to do that by interviewing these amazing female filmmakers and sharing their stories and guidance with the world.
That's great. I do have to apologize if you're hearing anything. It's the studio. People here in the studio are pretty loud. Anyhow, so I don't want there to be any, misunderstanding. Like, what is that noise? Okay, so we also talked about, like, you've lived in New York. You lived in San Francisco. You came to LA, somewhere you didn't really want to come to at first. You've been to a lot of places. So can we touch a little bit on that?
Yeah, absolutely. I actually grew up on the East Coast. I grew up in Toronto, Canada. I'm a former figure skater. I've traveled all over the world, and I've lived in New York for a decade. I lived in San Francisco for a decade. And then 5 years ago, my soul led me to LA. And it was so funny because I was literally having this conversation with my mom the other day, how we used to laugh, and I told her, I said, I'll never live in LA. They can't pay me enough money to go to Hollywood, and here I am now making movies. So it's kind of crazy. But the move to LA was the best decision I ever made. I mean, my entire life when I decided to do that just changed, and it was an incredible shift. And now I just feel so aligned with my creativity, and I think that was the calling of my soul's calling when I was in San Francisco, because I had been very successful with my books up to that point. And I always believe as a writer, as an artist, that you want to continue to grow, and I felt that in a way I had accomplished everything that I wanted to accomplish in that respect in the Bay Area. Mm-hmm. And in order to move forward, in order to grow as an artist, I needed to be in LA. And so it was like, okay. And then looking into working in film just seemed like the logical choice. I see everything visually to begin with. Mm-hmm. And so when I write my books, I'm writing them by seeing the film as it's already taking place. And so right. It just made perfect sense to then write books and then adapt those books to film.
Isn't that amazing? Because I totally understand what you mean when you say that. Because when I'm writing, sometimes I don't even care about grammatical errors or any, because I can't stop, because I visualize everything as I'm writing it. I can see what the character is doing. I can feel what the character is feeling, and the description just flows out of you naturally. Exactly. So when we're writing, you're in that zone. You can't get out. And so you're recently a filmmaker.
Yes.
When did you become a filmmaker?
Well, actually, it's funny because I actually directed a music video about 13 years ago. And it was literally for fun. We had a friend who was in the music business and had released a music video, and a group of friends, this was in Toronto, and a group of friends said, oh, let's recreate it with our own actors and, around the entire city of Toronto. And so I had the clipboard and I directed that baby from start to finish, and I loved it, and it was so much fun. And it was just for the fun of it. And then I started making, with my books, I started making the trailers for the books. Nice. And so that's how it really started, because it was like, okay, like I saw everything visually already, so I had the trailer in my head, and it just expanded from there. It was like, okay, well, now we've got a trailer, now let's make it the short, and let's go and just keep expanding. So
that's great. Yeah, that's great. And you do this completely on your own?
I do.
So completely independently?
Yes.
Okay. By the way, Robin is an amazing DP, director of photography. Got to put it out there, Robin. Anyhow, so book number 1, what was that about?
Yeah, so book number 1 is entitled, it's simply Sausalito, which is where I was living in the San Francisco Bay Area. And at the time, it was funny because it wasn't funny. It was like the worst year of my life, 2011. But I needed an outlet. I had so much going on in my life and so much loss. And I just needed somehow to get whatever was inside of me out. And it was through my photography and through my writing. So the book is a combination of my photographs and then inspirational quotes that I made up. And it was like, okay, this is it. And I had actually had the book completed for about 6 months, and I tried to publish it through Blurb, which is based in San Francisco, but it was so expensive to do just one book, and
Correct.
I'm like, I don't have any money here. So this is obviously not going to work. But I had the book, and it was completed. And in the fall of 2011, I had a friend of mine who was also a writer who had just published a book. His name is Rich German. He had just published a book called Monetize Your Passion. And I thought, well, that's what I need to do. I've got the creativity. I just need to know how to make money from it. And he was speaking at a conference in San Diego and invited me to come down. And I'm like, well, look, Rich, I'd love to come, but I don't have any money. I'm on the brink of losing my home here. But something internally said, you need to be there. It was so strong that it was like, you need to figure out a way to do this and go. And so I remember my car had died at that point, so I didn't have a car, but I still had my parking spot at my home, so I rented out my parking spot.
Smart lady.
And got a plane ticket. And then I had a friend from church who was like, well, we can give you $150 towards a bill, so towards my credit card bill. And I booked 3 nights at the hostel across from the convention center in downtown San Diego.
Smart.
And then it was like $500 to get into the conference. And I'm like, I have no idea. But the woman who was actually running the conference, Ariel Ford, had just done a teleseminar that I'd heard like 2 weeks prior, and had said on the teleseminar that whenever she has events, she's always looking for volunteers.
Perfect.
I've got a background in event management, so immediately emailed her. I said, look, he's invited me to this thing. I would love to come. I'm a new author. You got this book, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, we'd love to have you. So now I've got my ticket to the event. I've got the plane ticket. I've got the hostel stay. And for those 3 days, I just learned everything. I was around the best of the best in the publishing industry and just took it all in. And 30 days later, I published the book through Amazon, through CreateSpace, and it was on the market. And that was it. That was the beginning. That's how
great.
it started.
That's amazing. And what's great about that is that we all, when we go through difficult things in life, moments like what you went through, losing your home, losing everything, I totally understand where you're coming from. My family went through the same thing as well. And that recession hit us hard. It hit us really hard. And I mean, we're still trying to recover from it. I fear what may come again, I fear that something's going to happen again. It's one of those things, like, I don't want to go through another recession. We definitely don't want to go through a depression. Like, that was really close to it. And so you went through it and you rose from the ashes, and here you are.
Yeah, and it's interesting, though, because I know I was homeless twice in 2.5 years, and first in 2011 and then in 2013. And I really believe that it all has to do with mindset. The first time I was just like, how is this possibly happening to me? I have a freaking master's degree. I've got all this huge network and all this experience, and I was a victim, and I was in survival mode, and I just couldn't comprehend how all of this was happening. And the second time around, I realized, it was interesting the second time around because I had injured my back. So I had a very severe back injury. I could barely move. I had sciatica for 7 months. I was literally like in tears every day. And then I lost my job and I lost my home because I couldn't walk or sit or anything for like 30 minutes at a time. It was crazy. But what I did was I changed my mindset. Mm-hmm. I thought, you know what? We've been through this before. We obviously didn't die because we're still here. So instead of being that victim mentality and, that survival mode, I'm going to look at it as this. I am on an adventure, and where is life going to take me this week? And I literally lived like that for 8 months of not having a home. But with that simple, slight change of mindset, it changed everything. And I was running into people who I hadn't seen in months who were like, I'm coming back, to Sausalito. I'm selling my parents' house. We're in closing for 30 days. It's $1 million house on top of the hill. Can you house sit for us? Or a publisher friend who's like, my wife and I are going to Europe for 6 weeks. Can you house sit our place on Nob Hill? And it was like back to back to back.
Perfect.
It was
Perfect
amazing.
timing, yeah.
It was amazing. But it was because I changed the mindset. Exactly. And it was incredible just to see how that slight change really shifted everything. And you have the option, you have the choice of how you want to look at something, and I think it's really important.
Absolutely. I think that is one of the strongest things that people forget, because you go fight or flight, and you get into that mode, and then you fall victim to yourself, and then you start questioning it. But when you have that shift and that mindset of, I can look at it this way, or I can look at it that way, which is going to benefit me more.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And I do have to say, I wanted to take this opportunity to thank you, because when you were seeking filmmakers for your recent book, it's simply Filmmaking, I reached out to you as well, and we talked a little bit via email, and we went back and forth, and that was a big moment for myself. I had a shift, so I totally get what you're saying, because I exposed myself completely in your book, and I talked about something I never talked about publicly, and that was the first time I've done that publicly, and it was because I was able to. Things do happen for a reason. You called this out. I was finally told, like, you can talk now. It's changed. Your name can be cleared. And so that's when I said, I'm going to discuss it. This is the perfect timing. So it wasn't an easy thing to do, but I was glad that I was able to do it, and so I do want to thank you for that. And I think that's what's amazing, because, I had to shift my mind for that. It wasn't an easy couple years, because I was held back. A lot of negativity held me back. A lot of judgment held me back. And it was so strong that it caused me to become negative and judgmental. Ironically, I was trying not to be, because I used to be more so before, and now it's kind of like I shouldn't, because of what I went through. So it's interesting that you do have to shift a little bit in order to start anew.
Exactly. And I think I call it constant transformation. We're always learning, we're always growing. And that's what I loved about this book, is that these are 28 amazing women who have gone through so much. And I learned so much just by reading their stories. And it was incredible. And it was like to be able to now take these stories and not just learn for myself, but to share them with the whole world, and especially for aspiring filmmakers who are just starting out, who have no idea what to do. And I was like, I want to create this Bible, this resource guide, so that someone just starting out can say, okay, here's what I can learn from these women, and here are the mistakes that they made, and here are, things that I can do differently and I can learn from them. And it was wonderful, because it gave purpose to what I wanted to do, but it also, I feel I created almost like a safe container for these women to also share their stories.
Absolutely. It was very therapeutic. It absolutely was. And the other amazing thing is the timing could not be more perfect. I mean, female filmmakers, it's like just women in general. We're coming at the world strong.
Yeah.
It's kind of like we're done with a lot of things, and we just want change.
Exactly.
And change starts from a lot of places, but this is a good way. This is a great route to go. And you writing this book, your muse is just brilliant.
Well, it was so funny, because when she came in February and said, this is what you're going to do, and I thought, okay, this is a great idea. And then she says, and then you got to release it during Cannes. And I'm like, okay, no problem. And 3 months away. And then I started working on it. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is going to take a lot more work than I anticipated. But it was like that strong calling that I'm like, yeah, I know this is what I'm supposed to be doing. And when I first started reaching out, and everybody started saying yes, and it was like I was really guided towards the ones that I chose, because each one had their own beautiful, unique story and something to share. And I didn't want to just share, I wanted to share different areas of film. So there's screenwriters and producers and directors and cinematographers and editors and composers. And it was wonderful because I actually got to see the whole scope of filmmaking and not just one area, which is what I wanted to deliver.
It's just great how you made such an amazing collection of women. And you're right, it comes from different scopes, and they each tell their own story, and it comes from a different perspective. So there's certain things that I've learned as well reading it, and I'm like, okay, I didn't even think about that. That's great, and I'd hope that it would come out the same as well from the others. When you launched the virtual launch, I was a part of that, and I think it was great to see all that support as well. Like, these women were just all for it.
Exactly.
And that's really good. It wasn't just like, here's my story, bye.
Right.
There was a lot of involvement.
Exactly.
And I think we all felt a part of the book in that sense.
And that was my hope. I was like, this is not just my journey. It's an amazing journey of all these women, and together we're creating this incredible product that can now make a difference and support others.
Yeah, I haven't read it fully, just because she's reading it, so, and her mom and everybody else she's passed it around to. But I want to say that I do know some of these women in this book, which I think is monumental. So there's a kinship already, and the businesses, as they say, it's a small world, which it is. And what's lovely about it is that every single female was strong enough to show their strengths and their weaknesses. And to me, it's just like, okay, great. Now all we have to do is just continue to lift each other up.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think, too, that was the whole message that I received from the Muse when I finished this book, and she suggested that it was just the beginning, and is now the first book of a 7-book series. And so the other 6 books will then dive deeper into each area of screenwriting, of producing, of directing. And so we can get more women involved and go really deep into each area. And so it can be a separate guide on itself for someone who just wants to focus on one area.
Yeah, I think that's brilliant. I personally love the fact that is too, because like when I first came into the industry, I fell into it. I was introduced, by Alexa, because she was staff writing, and I had a whole nother career. I was teaching. And from there, I kind of started like lighting and did the drama with like the 8th graders, which I taught 2nd grade for 8 years. So, it was like this really nice shift. And then, I always took photos too when I was younger from my mom. And so when that all happened, I think would have been helpful, because then you have an idea, especially if you're first generation, you don't have any ties, you don't know where to go. Like, this is purely a guide of like, okay, great, now I can reference something, and do I want to be a director or a writer or a cinematographer or a composer? There's so many different departments and so many elements within this industry that now it's sky's the limit.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think, too, is that it really, like you said, it gives women an option to see what they like, what they want. And I think that anyone who wants to be, this is my personal opinion, anyone who wants to be a filmmaker should dab in all different areas, and just see what it's like. I mean, I found out I love editing. I could sit at a computer all day and edit, and I would be in my zone, in my glory. But I also know as a director, I can't be doing that on all my projects because there's just no time, So, but now I know what I want to look for when I hire an editor. So it's good to be able to see, what works, what are your strengths, what are your weaknesses, what are you truly passionate about?
Exactly. I feel like if you can work from the bottom up, then when you're at the top of the pinnacle, you then know this person's job and that value and how much time it takes, and you can then be considerate to your team, and then you understand it better.
Absolutely.
To me, but that's old school mentality, I think. Like Gma, my grandma, totally raised me that way. You work hard for what you want, and if you're not going to do it right, then don't do it at all. So definitely just keep the focus and work your way up, because then you're earning respect as well. You're not just walking on. And there's a lot of respect to that too, I feel.
Exactly. And I think also that, what I'm learning, especially after publishing 9 books, but most of the publishing and all the work with all the books that I did everything myself because I love marketing, I love, designing, and so I would do everything. But in filmmaking, it's a totally different animal because filmmaking has so many moving parts, and it really is a team project, and I noticed that going, well, I could do this, but I really shouldn't do that because I know somebody could do it better, and being the writer director, this is my vision, so I want it to be the best it can be.
Absolutely. I think too, when you split yourself, it takes away.
Absolutely.
So something that if you're concentrated on the one job, then you're giving it, your maximum effort. Whereas if you're splitting it, which there are circumstances that it does work, because there's a lot of pre-pro and you've given yourself enough time and allowance for it. But once you see that you have been able to release that and trust, if me being a DP, I would trust my operators, and we'd have a pre-game plan, and if there's a flag on the play, they already have their solution, they already know, and I trust them to compose it and get the shot, you know what I mean?
Exactly. So,
absolutely.
It does take a lot of communication, and that's very true. You do raise a good point, Robin and Cali, because it's interesting. I write and direct. I don't always direct everything I write, and my goal is to get to the point where I'm not always directing everything that I write as well. I want to direct other people's written work, and so when I'm in the zone of directing, I drop everything else. And so there's moments where I find myself and I'm sitting there and we're going over a shot and they say a line and I was like, whoa, what? Oh, and I completely forget that I wrote that. And it's the funniest feeling, because I'm like, oh, that's right. Okay, I wrote that.
It's actually very comical to watch because she was on set and she's like, wait, why does that sound familiar? I'm like,
right. Yeah.
The director hat was
You're
on.
so
Definitely.
focused, though.
Exactly.
You're so focused,
Yeah.
And if you're doing multiple things, which as an independent filmmaker, you do wear a lot of hats. And sometimes when you do that, you do sacrifice other parts of the project when you do that, And so it makes it a little bit difficult, but it's also satisfying. And so Robin and I, we work together a lot. And that's happened where we're both wearing multiple hats, and when that happens, it's kind of like it gets chaotic at a point, at a moment in time, and you forget for a moment, oh, I'm supposed to do this too, and I'm supposed to do that, and it starts to get overwhelming. So you have to have that team.
Exactly.
You have to trust others.
And I think too that it's not a bad thing to admit when you're just not into something or you're not very good at something. I know when I wrote my first script, it was horrible. And I thought, I don't like this. This is nothing like writing a book. What the heck am I doing? But what I realized, though, is that in certain projects, I'm eager to learn how to do it, because I know that, I want to do it. But I'm actually much more comfortable with writing the book and having somebody else adapt the script, and then I'll direct it. But it's just I think it's knowing that, though, going, okay, yeah, I'm going to do this just for the sake of doing it, or no, there's got to be somebody else that can do this better than I can, that can fulfill my vision.
Oh, absolutely. So what's amazing is so non-union wise, I operate for other DPs and I DP as much as I possibly can because my mentor was like, shoot everything, say yes, do everything. I'm like, absolutely, I'm gonna do it. In the union, I'm a second AC. And to me, that's very humbling because I always want to take care of my crew. I am the first one to make sure everything's good to go, they're comfortable, because we can never leave the camera. So it's, for me, they always tell me oh, you're the mom on set. I'm like, absolutely I am. I want to make sure you're good to go, you're not cranky, you have everything that you possibly could need. Because, if you're not happy, you're not comfortable, then, it takes away from your creativity, it takes away from your team. And all in all, you're there because you want to create something that you've read, or the DP is just into it, and the director, and it's the synergy on set is so fantastic that I feel like if there is an ego, then it's kind of you're taking away from what you really want to make.
Exactly, and it's a team event, right? It's happy set, happy crew, happy picture.
Yeah,
That's very true.
Yeah.
No, that's very, very true. And that's how the synergy works when we're all in it together, and understanding and letting go. It's all very important. What's your next one going to be? Is it? I know you're working. So actually, let's step aside from that. You're doing documentary, and then a film based on your number 8 book,
Yes.
which was.
So, backtrack. First of all, I have a book coming out in November, which is called Perception. And it's actually the 3rd book in my memoir series. So my first book, It's Simply Serendipity, it came out in 2013. And then Pearl came out in 2015. And now this one is going to come out in November. And that is the whole story of losing everything, the home and everything, going through that. That's my personal story of transformation. Perception is going to be slightly different because it's going to continue the story, but it's going to be mostly broken down into short stories and how we view life, you know. And so, yeah, that's the next immediate. Next year, I am releasing in May Shuffling the Tides, which is the 2nd book in my historical fiction series. And the 8th book that you mentioned was called Timing the Tides. And I actually wrote the book with my partner. And it was fascinating to write it together because I'm very right-brained. He's very analytical. So it was a good collaboration.
Very good balance.
Yes, very good balance. And we're now adapting that book to film. And
Congrats.
thank you. That was an incredible journey for us because it was a story that it's historical fiction, but it's based on a true story. And it's about 2 people who meet aboard Titanic in 1912. And then through reincarnation, they meet 100 years later. And so
Sorry, I'm making a facial expression because my heart and soul is genre and timepieces and like, yes, you're speaking my language.
Yes. And so, yeah, and that book was fascinating because we had no agenda for that book, no expectations for that book. It was just, we need to share this story with the world. It's you know, a part of our soul, a part of our heart. And it just blew up in the pre-sale. It hit bestseller in 5 countries and just went crazy. And so we're like, okay, well, we knew it was going to be a film eventually, so that's what we're working on now.
That is phenomenal.
Yeah, the 2nd book, Shuffling the Tides, which will come out a year from now in May. Actually, today, May 27th, 2019.
Serendipity.
Yes. Is going to it continues the story of this couple from Titanic, and it takes place aboard the maiden voyage of the Queen Mary.
Ah.
Yeah, so that should be fun. And we've already started shooting a trailer and everything for that. So
Fantastic.
yeah, so and then the 2 documentaries that I'm working on as well. So.
And you did your research because we discussed that as well. So when you were writing all this and you researched the Titanic and...
Oh my gosh, it was incredible because I just did so much research. I love the research. I mean, anything that has to do with history is just fascinating to me. And so just connected with incredible historians in the UK and in Ireland, and met this one guy who actually runs White Star Memories, which is all about historical memorabilia from the White Star Line ships. And so they actually have an exhibition going on right now aboard the Queen Mary called Titanic in Photographs.
Okay.
I'll be going there.
Yes, it's there through July 4th, I believe. And it's an amazing, we actually included that exhibition in the trailer for the Timing the Tides movie. And he actually did part of the voiceover. So, which
Nice.
I was like, I need an accent. And I'm like, you need to do this. He's like, really? I'm like, okay. And he was brilliant. He was perfect for it. So, yeah, so it worked out really well. And, yeah, but no, the history and the research. And then what was fascinating, though, was, like I said, it's a true story based on true people. And I've actually connected with the family of one of the protagonist, her grandson. And it's just been amazing to have that connection. He sent me photographs and videos and all these things of her life. And it was amazing because in my lifetime, I've always felt like I was a product of the 60s. Somewhere in another time, I was a 60s flower child. And yet I was born in 1970. And she died in 1959. So neither one of us got to see the 60s, you know, but it's like, there's that bond, you know, you know. So, and it's just all the research and everything that we learned throughout the whole process was just really amazing.
I was going to ask you, what inspired you to write this with him?
So the story is our story. We actually remember being on Titanic.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. So
I have like goosebumps.
yes. So we were there, and we met a century later, and here in LA. And when we started getting to know each other and putting pieces together and remembering the same things, it was like, oh, well, we should investigate this. And we started, and it was like, there we are. So yeah, it was amazing.
Wow.
It was amazing. Yeah.
That's great.
Yep.
I had a question.
Sure.
When you do your research, do you find that it alters certain parts or aspects of your writing or the story? Like you find things that you're like, I didn't think about that, and then you incorporate it or remove certain parts of it?
Well, I know, like, for the second book will be completely fictionalized because who he was in 1912, he actually died in 1927, so he wasn't around during the maiden voyage of the Queen Mary. So we get to make that all up now. It's like, how would we want to? Because it was interesting because the basis of the story is that he was a crew member, she was a third-class passenger. She was actually engaged to somebody in America and was heading to America. The sea was his whole world. So he was going to continue to, he had worked on the Olympic prior to Titanic, and that was his world. And so when they experienced this tragedy together, he actually saved her, got her to the lifeboat, and they were rescued on the same lifeboat.
Wow.
So they both survived. And but they couldn't be together. They had gone through this amazing traumatic experience together, and this bond had formed, and which is expected, you know. But they couldn't be together because she was committed to someone else, he was committed to the sea. And so it was, what happened, between them two, and where did their lives take them. And so the second book is about what happened in those 24 years and how they meet again. And yeah.
That's great.
That is beautiful.
That really is.
Second chance. That's basically the slogan for the trailer. It says, what would you do if life gave you a second chance?
Oh.
Yes. Take
Take it
advantage.
advantage. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's been interesting. I mean, it hasn't been easy because in doing this together and in doing, it's brought up a lot of painful memories and, moments of, disappointment and separation and what ifs and why did life bring us together now, and just all these different things. And so it's been for us really an opportunity to learn and to grow and to release the past, so that now we have this second chance and see where life takes us.
That's beautiful. I just have a question because I'm not a writer. So for all the writers that are out there, what is your process? Like, what are your...
Yeah, so I don't have I write when I'm inspired. When the muse comes, I write. And I'm a mermaid. I love the sea.
Too. I'm a Pisces.
Okay. So I need to be on the beach. And when I'm on the beach with my notebook, I get downloads. I literally just get downloads. It comes, I write. I don't question, I write. I don't write every day. That's just how I am. Mm-hmm. And I think that's important too for writers to understand it, that there's no one set way to do it. There's no cookie cutter way. It's what works best for you. And I always tell my clients, because I coach now women in transition through the entire publishing process. Yeah. So
wonderful.
And I tell them, I'm like, this is about you and your story and what your purpose, what you hope to fulfill with this book. It's like, do you want to write? Do you feel, and are you an introvert? Are you an extrovert? That has to do with marketing, how you want to market this book, So there's all different things, but each of us is unique. And so it's like really what works best for us.
Oh, I love that. Because that's with photography. I was just like, I started in film. So when I took a big trip and for college played in soccer and lived in Florence, Italy, and I refused to take a digital camera. I was like, no, I'm not going to take one. Went and I was just like, I had one film camera that was all black and white and one that was color. And I'm glad I didn't, because to me, I feel like that sets the tone.
Exactly. And it's so funny you say that because I'm also a photographer, right?
Correct,
Well, my
yes.
partner's also a photographer. Now, I am the eye, right? I see it, I shoot it. He is very technical. You know, where's the lighting? How's the lighting hit your face? and no clue, okay? So I have a photographer who does all of my marketing material for me, you know. One day she wasn't available, and I said, I need to do a shoot. Can you do it? He's like, yeah, sure. So he's like asking me all these questions that are technical, and I'm like, he's like, how do you want this? And I'm like, I don't know. Just take the picture. If I like it, I like it. You know? I was like, I have no idea what you're talking about.
That is definitely the creative. I never took a photo class until I was in college. I always saw my mom taking photos, so I just kind of borrowed and never gave back her camera, but I still have and still take those photos. I never learned it. It was just literally by eye, and even with lighting, I just do it by eye.
Exactly.
Exactly.
And it's so funny because same here, I've never taken a photography class in my life, and my photos have been in galleries all over the country. I shot the America's Cup in 2013, and it was just like, people are like, how did you do that? I'm like, well, I went up to Oracle, knocked on the door, and said, this is what I want to do. Who do I need to talk to? Next thing I know, I've got a pass. I'm at the club. I'm with my camera, you know?
Yeah.
And that's what you got to do. You just, need to put forward the effort and, go from there.
Yeah, I think it all circles back to that mindset. If you really want something,
absolutely,
and you have that passion and that drive, it will happen.
Yeah, and I think too is that a lot of people, this is what I find, is they have a dream and they have no idea how they're going to get from A to B, so they just don't bother doing it, And I say, you don't need to know how. And that's the fun part, because literally when I went to San Diego, I had no idea how, but I knew I needed to do it.
Correct.
And the answers came. And sometimes the answers come in ways that you can't possibly fathom, or just like, seriously, did that really happen? And it's just like so beyond what you can imagine, but it's amazing, and it's perfect for just exactly what you need.
Yeah, I want to say, real quick note, one of my first jobs I was given was from a gaffer named Mark Combs, may he rest in peace, and he just said, you know what, Robin, he's like, do what you love, and if someone doesn't like what you're doing, fuck it. And I was like, all right, that's the mentality to have. Like, if you love what you're doing and you can stand behind that's all that matters. Because there are going to be people that will enjoy what you have to offer, and then there's the other side of it, and that's fine, like to each their own. But, if it makes you happy at the end of the day, then keep doing what you're doing, because you believe that this is what you're supposed to be doing.
Exactly. Alexa and I were having this conversation beforehand, and saying, what is the saying that, what other people think of you is none of your business?
True.
Right?
That is true. It's a hard concept to grasp your head around, though, too.
Exactly.
Sophia, who was here last week, same thing. And it's so fantastic to hear that is a constant. You know what I mean? Because we're in society, and like we're taught, oh, this is what it should be. This is what it should look like. This is what, this, and this. And it's kind of like, no, the checklist is mine. And I think that embrace is a little more progressive now.
Exactly. And I think things that often come to you, whether it's through a muse or just, a thought, it doesn't have to make sense. Sometimes the best things make no sense at all until it's out there, and then it's just like, wow, that was brilliant.
That's true. And you go to the beach and you sit there and you write. Besides that, is there anything else? Because I know you saying your muse, her calling is at 3:30 in the morning, So obviously you're not at the beach at that time.
No.
So, like for me, I get inspired when I go to Santa Barbara. I haven't been there in a while, but sometimes I would take a train or take a drive there, spend a couple days or a day, come back the next day, whatever it is, when I feel like I'm clogged in my head and I need to just get away. That's the place that I go to, and I feel like as soon as I get there, there's release. I just feel inspired, and it has nothing to do with the city itself. It's just, for some reason, that's my haven where I go, and then I come back and I'm like, I'm ready. Like, let's go to what's your place? What's your haven besides the beach? Because there's got to be somewhere that just unclogs everything.
Well, I think it's Santa Monica in general, and I remember during 2000 2013, the beginning of 2013, when I was on the verge of losing everything again. I had racked up, since I've traveled all over the world, I'd racked up frequent flyer miles, a gazillion of them. And whenever things were so bad and I just needed to get away, even if it was just for a couple of days, I'd end up in Santa Monica. And, you know, and I remember when I moved here, and I lived in Sausalito, California, which is paradise. And people are like, how could you possibly leave Sausalito for LA, you know? And I'm like, I have no idea. I'm like, literally, it was a soul's calling. I had no idea. But for me, I mean, Santa Monica, I feel totally at peace. My soul is so happy. My heart is just so happy. And I wake up every morning, and the first thing I do, I have actually a gratitude session. That's the first thing I do before I even get out of bed. And it just starts with, thank you for allowing me to see another beautiful day in my beloved Santa Monica, and, you know, thank you for my breath and for, you know, my five senses and things that we take for granted, you know, this comfortable bed. I can't tell you how much I love my bed. Okay, when you go a year without your bed, you know, you grow to really appreciate it. And so things like that, and thank you for this roof over my head, because when you go without a home for a year, you know, and just simple things. And I often tell people, you know, in that time of transformation, when I was going through all of that, two things mattered to me, and that was, where am I going to sleep and what am I going to eat? Nothing else mattered, you know. So now it's like everything is just such a blessing, you know, every little thing. And, you know, I'm just grateful, you know. And so I think just being in Santa Monica, you know, and who knows what the future holds, you know, but for now, and I've learned to live now, because also when you don't have a home and you don't know where you're going to sleep one day from the next, you can't plan anything. And believe me, for an event planner, that's not easy.
No,
okay,
no. I'm the same.
So I learned very quickly through that period just to really simplify life, you know, and to really realize what was important, and, you know, what moments I will cherish. You know, watching a sunset with my partner is the greatest thing in the world to me, you know, and it involves nothing but the two of us in the sunset, you know. And so little things like that. And I think it's just, you know, that's where I get my inspiration.
I think that's very humbling. I mean, I always, since I was little, have always like constantly simplified. So like when there's too much clutter, I was like, I can donate this, I can give this, like, you know, that's just a methodical thing for me to do as well. So when you're saying that, like, it's completely relatable, you know. And I think it's funny that the trend is like being a minimalist, and I'm like, well, I mean, yes, let's have a smaller footprint, let's try to like condense that and actually be with each other and like understand where each other is coming from. Because like, even though someone has a smile on their face, you don't know what baggage they're carrying, you don't know what battles they're fighting.
Exactly.
You know, I mean, I think that's the one thing that we never really truly consider. Like yesterday, Alexa and I were walking our dogs. Like, I was walking my puppy, she was walking her puppy, and came back, and we heard like this car spin out, and we're like, oh no. And I was like, I was waiting for the crash, and I was like, please pull out of it, please pull out of it. And we heard the boom, and we both turned and looked at each other, and I booked it to make sure this person was all right. And I mean, he kind of like was going to take off, and then he saw me and he stopped, and he opened his door, and he looked like he was not okay. He wasn't drinking. I don't think he was on drugs. He just looked like he was so defeated. And I was just like, are you okay? And he's like, yeah, my car's fine. I'm like, no, are you okay? Like, you don't look like you're all right. Like, is everything all right? Did something happen? And then the neighbor came out, and he's like, you just hit my car. And I was like, he's not okay. You know, he's here. She took a photo. Everything's all right. Just that shift, like, immediately.
Exactly.
Totally calmed him down, because I was like, it's a car. Your wife wasn't in it. Your babies weren't in it. It's a piece of metal. This person right here is not all right. And if we can take that time, like what you said, sitting with your partner for like that magic hour of time, that's an hour of your time. You're in it. Exactly. You're feeling that. And like, that's something that's going to last longer than here's this material thing. Exactly.
You know, and I think too, it's that really the deep understanding that we're all one, you know, and that connection. And I know now I feel so blessed to be able to pay it forward to others. And when I did my Pearl book tour, I went to 10 cities around the U.S., and I made sure that every city that I stopped in, I visited an organization that supported the homeless. And so I wanted to see the work that they did. I wanted to be able to give back in some small way. And even today, I mean, anywhere I go, you know, I mean, Santa Monica has a huge homeless population,
Yes.
you know, and I will sit on a bench, and I don't have a car, so I have to take the bus everywhere. And so I'll sit on the bench and I will talk to homeless people, and just to hear their stories. And sometimes that's all they need, is just for someone to listen to them, right?
Absolutely.
That
Very
moment,
true.
Yes.
that moment to just be heard, be seen, you know, and that right there is everything, you know. And so anytime that I can do something to pay it forward and to, you know, just, I'll give some, if I don't have any money, because we're filmmakers, right? We're just, right? You know, I will ask someone, I'll be like, can I give you a hug, you know, and that just means everything to them, you know. And I think it's to really just recognize, you know, that we're all people, we're all going through our own journey, our own set of, you know, limiting beliefs, and we're just trying to make it like the rest of us, you know. And so it's just, you know,
Yeah,
it's
that
compassion. It's compassion.
They just want to feel that human connection.
Exactly.
You know, like I think it's so strange because like recently, so she knows this. I'm gonna deter just a brief blip. I crochet, so I scarves, blankets, whatever. It's very methodical for me, and like you don't really have to think about it. So with my extra scraps of yarn, I create just weird colored scarves, and then I just give them to homeless, because I was actually also homeless for 2 months, so I definitely can relate to you. And so with that, I also have like little Ziploc bags. So when I travel, you know, the little, you know, toiletries, instead of them throwing it away, I like basically, I'm like, oh, I'm going to take these. And then I have like a little Ziploc bag in my car, and I always hand those out.
Yeah.
So, okay, sorry
No,
for
no,
deterring.
you're okay. You're good. So it's important. Obviously, this is a good way to leave it off, to be impactful, do great things, treat others well, and I think you're set in life. I mean, you know, don't stop. You know, like what you said, from point A to point B. Doesn't matter how you're going to get there, just go.
Exactly.
Can you please tell everyone where they can find you?
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know, and your books, everything, please.
So my website is caligilbert.com, C-A-L-I. Cali, my name's on every T-shirt in town. That's the best way to remember. Gilbert, Gilbert.com. And all my books are on Amazon as well. And so, yeah, but the website is where you'll find out everything. Like, I wear many hats, so it's all there.
Perfect.
Oh, yes. I'm definitely going to get the book with,
Yes.
what was it, timing
the Tides.
Timing the Tides.
So-
Going for that one.
And
the
if you
film.
haven't gotten it yet, please do. I encourage all the filmmakers out there starting or who have already been in this industry. It's a great read. It's Simply Filmmaking by Cali Gilbert. Get it. You can find it on Amazon. I'm going to see if we can put a link on our website as well. Cali, thank you so much for being here today, for sharing your story, your life. I really do appreciate it. Thank you for including me in your book. You know, that you released a part of me that wasn't easy, so I appreciate that, and I'll appreciate it forever. So thank you.
Well, thank you so much for having me.
Yes. Robin, thank you again for being a co-host.
Oh, my pleasure. It was amazing. These women that you're finding that are reaching out to you are just phenomenal. Like, the sisterhood among us
Yes.
is strong.
Yes,
Yeah,
it is.
and we're just getting started.
Exactly.
So, Cali, we look forward to more books
Thank you.
and your films.
Yeah.
Plural. So, very much success to you. Okay.
Thank you.
And thank you again. So, this is Female Filmmakers Fuse. Thank you.
You're listening to Female Filmmakers Fuse with Alexa Poehler, only on LA Talk Radio.